Hi, I'm Doug Moody, and we're back at the Adirondack Folk School, where I teach classes on the art of building bamboo fly rods. When we were here last, we took a look at the hand splitting process. From here, we'll go to my home workshop, where I can show you the finer points of hand planing and tapering a split bamboo fly rod. The hand planing process is the key to rod making. Using your hand, your eye, your patience, and the tools to try to take this substance, this kind of gnarly substance that's extremely strong, and you have to keep constantly going back to the piece you're working on and make sure that it's straight, and make sure that the spots at the nodes where the grain starts to curl, the stresses that are being put on that point, you have to straighten that out. I've found that as I'm doing this, I keep going back to my node areas, which was where the grain curls, so it's where things are going to bend and shift, and I keep constantly going back to those spots and rechecking them after I've already straightened them, and re-straightening them, and making sure that that transition is smooth, because that's how you get your pieces to lie together really well. So I keep constantly going back and yeah, that's better. I have to make sure that the spots going in and out of the nodes stay really smooth and really even. The nodes tend to curl around, and I get to the end of my planing, the stresses are a little bit different deep in the node, and there ends up being a little imperfection in the line, a little squiggle that when you run the hand plane over, you'll dig out too much material and you'll have a weak spot, a soft spot, and a glue line. The lignin, which is the resin that holds the fibers of the bamboo together, when you heat that, it becomes very soft, and you can actually bend the strip, bend the piece of bamboo back into relatively straight formation. That piece had a nice kink to it, and now, as you can see, this I'm going to start on the rougher of the two edges, but you can see that edge is nice and straight. Once you have the strip straightened through the node area, then you can go into the nodes themselves, and you want to make the node level with the rest of the enamel that is on the top edge of the bamboo. And when you look at it, you can see it, but especially when you run your finger across it, your finger is very accurate. The nerves in your finger, gently, because it's razor sharp, you gently rub your finger across it, you can feel any inconsistencies, any high spots that are on the node. And the node is raised above the enamel level, and you want to get it even. So you just very briefly, I take a coarser file and knock off the high spots. Then I come back with a fine file and smooth it out so that it transitions, so it flattens the node and transitions evenly onto the existing enamel that you haven't taken off yet. And what that's going to do is when you put it in your form, it makes it nice and even to the side edge of the form, so you shave your piece with the plane as evenly on this side as that side and at the same height as the node is in the center. So you're optimally making this all the same height, just as straight. So when you plane this side and plane that side, all three sides will end up being equal. It will be equilateral, optimally. It is a natural substance though, and sometimes that's easier said than done. We've smoothed out the nodes, re-straightened them, so that as you plane, you're taking out more and more imperfections and making it smoother and smoother. And optimally, what you're trying to do is create a piece that's smooth enough that you're just taking off even layers of material. This is the most important step of the process. This is where things are the most critical, is in your planing. And it can be a challenge. The tolerances are extremely tight. The slightest micronic deviance from your taper creates an effect that you will feel in the casting of the fly rod that you make. So if you want consistency, your planing has to be extremely consistent. And it takes practice. It takes a lot of practice. Now the tip of the fly rod takes an amazing amount of stress. Bamboo is an incredible material. The diameter up at the tip of each of these strips gets down to 0.03125 microns. It's extremely small, and it will take forces in casting of up to 120,000 pounds per square inch. So it's pretty good for a grass. I wanted to talk briefly about some of the tooling that I use and about the metal planing form and how it works. I use a hand plane for the final planing process to smooth out the strips and plane them down as accurately as I can. It's a simple adjustable throat smooth plane. The throat opens larger and smaller. The smaller the opening, the more you're just going to take the tops off the imperfections. It puts a lot of pressure on that point, and it gives you a nice, clean, even shave down the whole strip. Smoothness is what you're ultimately trying to achieve. I test that work with a micrometer. What I do mostly with the micrometer is check the pieces to see exactly how much material I need to take off. It helps me keep an eye on the general thickness of the pieces. When I really get into the miking of the tips, setting them to the micron, then I use a caliper with a gauge, and it has a V-notch in it, which I set the adjustment so that it zeroes out with the V-notch, and I move it up and down the strip as I plane it and check to make sure that I am as accurate as possible. I also check the angle. You're taking these pieces that have been cut to a rough 60-degree angle and making sure that each of the sides is 60 degrees, and I use mechanical angle gauge for that to check my work. And the taper that you establish, your work surface is your planing form, and the taper of your pieces is built into the planing form. There's a V cut. There's an angle cut on each of these two separate pieces of 3/4 inch cold rolled steel, and there's Allen bolts on either side of the form. So what you do is you start at one end of the form or the other, and you put your gauge on and adjust the form. You'll take one of your Allen screws here and loosen it. Take the tension off the other side. You turn one direction, and it's getting wider open now, and now you see this way as you turn it, it gets smaller and smaller. You set it on the gauge to where you want the depth, and then lock it in so it doesn't move, and you're ready to plane.